Hey everyone, this is Jake Munger. You are listening to the .zoologist.podcast. I hope you're ready. We've got a very exciting episode on tap for today. We're going to be learning more about some of the amazing creatures that inhabit our planet. We're going to be learning facts and hearing stories, all centered around animals, all centered around the animal kingdom. I hope you're as excited to go on this journey as I am. Now let's get ready to get wild. Hello everyone, thank you so much for hopping on and listening to today's episode. Hope you are having a wonderful start to your week, and I hope that you are as excited for today's topic as I am, because today we are going to be learning all about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs might have been the most successful group of animals ever of all time. From the tiny Eoraptor to the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex, these creatures came in all different shapes and sizes, and they ruled the planet for nearly 200 million years. Today, we're going to take a journey through the Mesozoic era and give you a brief history of these amazing reptiles all the way up until their sudden extinction approximately 66 million years ago. Let's dive in. Thank you once again for hopping on and listening to today's episode of the Zoologist Podcast. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe and follow on your favorite streaming platform so that you never miss a new episode. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter if you have Twitter. We are constantly posting bonus content, animal facts, updates, and information regarding the show, and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. So be sure to follow us. You can find us at the.zoologist.net/Twitter, and make sure you never miss a thing going on with the Ultimate Animal Podcast. Alrighty, now let's talk dinosaurs. I gotta be honest, I had a ton of fun doing the research for this week's episode. There's something about dinosaurs that brings out the inner child in me. They're just so fascinating, and I think part of it is because of how big some of these dinosaurs got to be. But I think another reason is because these dinosaurs represent a bygone age, a bygone era in Earth's history, a lost world that we can never go back to, and they're almost like our connection to that world. And so I think that's why they're so captivating to so many different people, is because of this link that they represent. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go over a brief history of dinosaurs, their origins, what sets dinosaurs apart, what makes a dinosaur a dinosaur. And I'm going to point out some specific examples of dinosaurs that lived throughout the Mesozoic era, all the way up until their extinction about 66 million years ago. So kind of a brief rundown, a brief overview of dinosaur history. That's what we're going to do today. And we're going to start by traveling back in time, naturally, approximately 252 million years ago, back to the beginning of the Mesozoic era and the start of the Triassic period, the first portion, the first section, I guess you could say, of the Mesozoic. Now, at this time in Earth's history, just to kind of paint the picture for you, life on Earth was still recovering from a massive extinction event known as the Great Dying. This was the worst extinction event in Earth's history, and it killed off, by some estimates, about 90% of all animal life. It took 10 million years for Earth's biodiversity to fully recover, so it was a big deal. At the time, all of the land on Earth, all of the continents, were combined into one giant landmass, a supercontinent known as Pangaea. You might have heard of Pangaea before. It covered about a quarter of Earth's surface, and it was surrounded by an enormous ocean called Panthalassa. The climate on Pangaea was much warmer and drier than it is today. There was no ice at the poles, and the interior of Pangaea was covered in vast deserts, although there were some regions that received seasonal monsoons. Now, at the time, the dominant forms of life, at least on land, were a group of animals known as synapsids. They are probably better known by the term mammal-like reptiles, but that isn't completely accurate. They aren't technically reptiles. They were ancestors of mammals. They would go on to evolve into mammals. And these synapsids, these animals, before the Triassic began, they had already been the dominant forms of life on land for about 100 million years. And most of them died out during the Great Dying, but the ones that survived would continue to be the dominant life forms on land throughout the Triassic period. However, they would soon be challenged by another group of animals that emerged about 245 million years ago, a diverse group of reptiles known as the archosaurs. And the archosaurs, they would go on to include animals such as crocodiles, pterosaurs, and most significantly, for our purposes, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs, what set them apart from other archosaurs was their unique anatomy. Dinosaurs had a unique set of physical characteristics and traits that set them apart from other archosaurs and from other reptiles. Most notably, they had specific modifications in their skeleton that allowed them to walk on two legs. Eventually, there were some dinosaurs that would evolve to be quadrupeds, or walk on four legs, but the skeletal structure was the same, and it's this skeletal structure that set dinosaurs apart from other ancient reptiles, such as pterodactyls and plesiosaurs, ancient reptiles that often get grouped in with dinosaurs when we talk about that period of Earth's history. So those skeletal structures, that unique anatomy, that's what makes a dinosaur a dinosaur. It's difficult to say exactly when the first dinosaurs appeared because the fossil record isn't exactly clear when it comes to the origins of dinosaurs. The oldest fossils that we have of a creature that might be a dinosaur belongs to a reptile called Nyasasaurus. The thing is, though, is that the fossils that we have of Nyasasaurus are incomplete and fragmentary, so it's difficult to say whether or not it actually was a true dinosaur. In any case, we know that by about 230 million years ago, dinosaurs had firmly established themselves as a distinct group of animals. Animals such as Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus lived during this time, and they were distinctive dinosaurs. They had all of the skeletal structures and physical characteristics that make a dinosaur a dinosaur. These early dinosaurs were bipedal. They walked on two legs, and they were carnivores or omnivores. The first herbivores didn't start to appear until later in the Triassic, and they included the ancestors of long-necked dinosaurs, sauropods. Dinosaurs such as Plateosaurus and Melanorosaurus appeared during the Triassic, and they were the forerunners to the gigantic sauropods that would go on to lumber across the Mesozoic landscape. Now, dinosaurs, they began to evolve and to diversify during the Triassic, but they wouldn't become the dominant life forms on land until the end of the Triassic period. During the Triassic, throughout the Triassic, it was the synapsids as well as another group of archosaurs, the pseudotsuchians, crocodiles and their relatives. These are the animals that would be the dominant forms of life on land up until the end of the Triassic, when another mass extinction event killed off many of those animals and opened the door for the dinosaurs to rule the earth on land. Alrighty, I think that's a good place to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, the next two sections in the Mesozoic era, as well as some of the dinosaurs that lived during those periods. Don't go anywhere. Are you a brand new podcaster, hoping to share what you're passionate about to whoever's willing to listen, but you aren't sure where to start? Navigating the logistics of your podcast can be confusing, from tracking growth to getting your podcast on the biggest platforms like Apple and Spotify. That's why I use Captivate. Captivate is a podcast publishing site that's user-friendly and offers everything you need to fulfill your podcast's full potential. They'll help you publish your podcast to all of the most popular platforms, as well as help you track your growth through daily, weekly, 28, and 90-day download numbers, as well as the averages, so you can see where your podcast might be flourishing or floundering. What's more, they'll help you with promotion and advertising. They offer free courses on how to start and run the perfect podcast, and they even throw in a free website with your subscription, completely customizable to fit your podcast's personality. You can sign up now starting at $19 a month, and you'll even get a free 7-day trial so you can decide whether or not it's right for you. Sign up today at the.zoologist.net/captivate, and what's more, you'll be supporting my show. Captivate truly is a podcaster's best friend. Welcome back as we continue our discussion about dinosaurs. So far, we've talked about dinosaurs in the Triassic, we've talked about the origins of dinosaurs, and we've talked about what makes a dinosaur, those physical features and characteristics that set them apart from other similar reptiles. And now we're going to jump into the Jurassic period. By the end of the Triassic, the continent Pangaea had begun to split up into two separate continents. It would be Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. Now, eventually, throughout the Jurassic, those two continents would continue to be broken up. By the end of the Jurassic, the continents would be beginning to take the form that they have today. Now, all of this change also meant that climate changed with it, and with that climate change came a change in life on Earth as well. The climate became much more humid, much more subtropical, and lush green landscapes and ecosystems replaced the vast deserts that covered the interior of Pangaea. The two specific things that I want to talk about that happened in the Jurassic period. One was the further diversification of the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs quickly became the dominant forms of life on land as they became much more diverse and started to come in all different shapes and sizes. I mean, for example, you had theropods that grew to be much larger. Allosaurus was one of the dominant predators of the time. The raptor Deinonychus also lived during the Jurassic period. And you also had huge, intimidating-looking herbivores like Stegosaurus, which evolved around this time. But one of the more interesting dinosaur groups that officially emerged during the Jurassic period were the sauropods, the long-necked dinosaurs, the largest land animals that ever lived. Sauropods included Brontosaurus, officially named Apatosaurus. These dinosaurs could grow to be over 70 feet long, about the length of 2 school buses, and weigh as much as 26 tons, which is more than 3 elephants. To put that into the metric system, that's about 21 meters long and 23 metric tons. Brachiosaurs also evolved during this time. Brachiosaurus was one of the largest sauropods that ever lived, definitely one of the larger sauropods that lived during the Jurassic period. These dinosaurs could also grow to be about 70 feet long, but there's evidence that some larger individuals could grow to be almost 100 feet long, which is about 30 meters in the metric system. These dinosaurs could also grow to be about 40 feet tall, or 12 meters tall, and they could have weighed upwards of 90,000 pounds, or almost 41,000 kilograms. It's fair to question how these animals grew to be so big, because quite honestly, it just doesn't seem like it should be possible that life, especially life on land, should be able to grow to be such a large scale. And there are probably several factors that allowed these animals to be so huge. For one, their long necks probably gave them an advantage over other herbivores. It allowed them to access food sources that these other herbivores could not access themselves. In addition to this, it's likely that these animals had a very high, very fast metabolism, which would have allowed them to grow to be enormous sizes in a relatively short amount of time. It's also believed that as these animals grew, their metabolism slowed. So as they got bigger, their metabolism got lower and lower. And as their metabolism got lower, it allowed them to survive on less and less food. Another factor that likely contributed to these dinosaurs growing to be so big was their teeth. As a matter of fact, these dinosaurs did not need to chew. Their teeth weren't built for them to grind their food. Instead, they were solely designed for them to strip vegetation away from branches and leaves. Because of this, it allowed them to consume more in a single feeding session, and this probably allowed them to grow bigger as well. These are just a few of the factors that likely contributed to these animals' growth, but in any case, whatever it was that let these animals grow to be so big, they were certainly impressive. But the other thing that happened in the Jurassic that was very, very important for dinosaur evolution was the emergence of birds. The first birds appeared about 150 million years ago with the first bird, Archaeopteryx. This marked a new milestone in dinosaur evolution. Up to this point, dinosaurs had already had feathers for millions of years. In fact, there's evidence that dinosaurs may have had feathers almost since their very beginning. The common ancestor of all dinosaurs may have had feathers themselves. The reason they evolved these feathers probably wasn't for flight purposes, at least not at first. It's much more likely that these feathers were for insulation or for mating displays instead. In any case, eventually they would be used for flight when the first birds emerged. And in fact, birds are not considered to be separate from dinosaurs. They're actually considered to be dinosaurs themselves. Birds form their very own line of dinosaurs, and so birds such as chickens, penguins, hummingbirds, they're all just as much a dinosaur as Tyrannosaurus rex. As a matter of fact, one of the definitions of a dinosaur is the common ancestor of, basically, if you take a bird, let's say a pigeon, and then you take a dinosaur, they use triceratops. If you take a bird in one hand and a triceratops in the other, and you go all the way back to their common ancestor, that common ancestor that they both have with each other, and all of the animals that evolved from that common ancestor are considered dinosaurs. Because of this, dinosaurs are often referred to by researchers in two different categories. There are the avian dinosaurs, the birds, and then the non-avian dinosaurs, which are the ones that we're familiar with being dinosaurs. So the Jurassic period lasted from about 200 million years ago at the end of the Triassic, and it ended with a small extinction event, one that's not very well understood, that occurred about 145 million years ago. And the end of the Jurassic period ushered in the start of the Cretaceous period, the last period of the Mesozoic era. And the Cretaceous was the longest section, I guess you could say, of the Mesozoic era. It lasted about 80 million years. And with so much time, there was a lot of time for dinosaurs to diversify. All sorts of different dinosaurs, many of the ones that we're familiar with today, lived during this time period. For example, sauropods grew even bigger. We talked about Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus, but they had nothing to the largest sauropods, which lived during the Cretaceous, and which were known as the Titanosaurs. This included such giants as Dreadnoughtus, Argentinosaurus, and Patagotitan, which was recently discovered, and which is considered by some to be the largest land animal to have ever lived. By some estimates, it may have reached up to 122 feet in length, which is 37 meters in the metric system, and a weight of over 70 tons, which is 63 metric tons. It's important to note, though, that some scientists do believe that these are overestimates. Beyond the sauropods, other large herbivores began to evolve during this time, and they replaced many of the herbivores that lived during the Jurassic period. Herbivores such as Iguanodon, the ceratopsids, which includes Triceratops, and the hadrosaurs, which may have been one of the most successful, if not the most successful group of dinosaurs to ever live. These dinosaurs formed enormous herds of hundreds and potentially even thousands of individuals. But beyond the herbivores were pretty cool, but it was really during the Cretaceous that some of the coolest carnivores of the Mesozoic era began to evolve. I'm talking creatures such as Spinosaurus, the largest theropod that ever lived. These things were huge. They could weigh up to 22 tons, which would be about 19 metric tons, and they were as tall as a giraffe. And they get their name because of the huge sail that was on their back, which may have been for display or for temperature regulation. Despite their size, however, these dinosaurs were probably fish eaters. They had a long, thin snout and conical teeth, which were perfect for catching fish, although they probably did hunt and eat other dinosaurs as well. They might have also been semi-aquatic. They have a very dense, very compact skeleton, which would have been perfect for buoyancy purposes. In addition to this, some of the coolest raptors, officially scientifically known as dromaeosaurs, evolved during the Cretaceous as well. In the early Cretaceous, a Utah raptor, the largest raptor to ever live, evolved, and these things were just absolutely enormous. They could grow to be up to 23 feet long, and it's estimated that they may have weighed up to 600 pounds. The better-known raptor that lived during the Cretaceous was Velociraptor, the star of the Jurassic Park series. But what's really interesting, or maybe more disappointing than interesting, is that Velociraptors actually probably weren't as fierce as the Jurassic Park series makes them out to be. See, the thing is that Velociraptors were only the size of a turkey, and they probably weren't as smart. They were probably smart for dinosaurs, but they probably weren't as smart as the Jurassic Park series makes them out to be. So Velociraptors in the Jurassic Park series may have actually been modeled after Deinonychus, which was larger in size and probably would have fit the description of the raptors in Jurassic Park much better. But anyway, Utah raptor, Velociraptor, but probably the most famous carnivore that lived during the Cretaceous, and probably the most famous dinosaur of all time, was the Tyrannosaurus rex itself. And I am happy to tell you that T-Rex almost definitely lived up mostly to its reputation that it's built for itself today. T-Rex was fearsome. First of all, they were absolutely enormous. Not the biggest theropods to ever live, but one of the biggest for sure. They could grow to be about 40 feet long, which would have been about 12 meters in the metric system, and stand about 12 feet tall, or 3 meters tall. And they likely weighed as much as a bull elephant, somewhere between 5 and 8 tons, or 4.5 to 7 metric tons. What really made T-Rex scary was its bite. These things had just massive jaws, which could generate an estimated 6 tons of force, which is enough to crush a car. What's more, they had a mouth lined with razor-sharp teeth that were the size of bananas, built to rip and tear into flesh. They had an excellent sense of smell, which they used to track down their prey. But T-Rex wasn't without its weaknesses. First of all, you know about its arms. They were tiny. But what you might not know about is that it's unlikely that T-Rex was able to run very fast due to how heavy it was. When these dinosaurs did chase their prey, it's believed that they couldn't have ambled much faster than 15 miles per hour. But as cool as the dinosaurs were, and as widespread, and as fearsome, and as amazing as they grew to be, all good things must come to an end. And about 66 million years ago, it's believed that a huge asteroid, over 6 miles wide, struck the Earth off the coast of modern-day Mexico, near Chicxulub. This asteroid, it created a crater about 112 miles wide, and it set off a chain of events that would kill off anywhere between 65 and 75% of all life on Earth. The effects of this asteroid's impact were immediate, and they were devastating. It would have caused massive earthquakes, creating enormous tsunamis and landslides. The impact also sent an incredible amount of rock and debris particles up into the air, and this had several different effects. First of all, some of these particles probably carried an immense amount of kinetic energy, and as they descended back to Earth, this energy would have taken the form of heat, and this would have created an intense wave of heat across the planet, which probably would have cooked most dinosaurs alive, or most animals alive that weren't underground or underwater. It lasted for several hours, and it probably would have had a devastating effect on life on the planet. In addition to this, sulfur was also kicked up into the atmosphere, which would have caused deadly acid rain, and any ash and dust that remained in the atmosphere caused a global cooling effect for several years that would have also had a devastating effect on the environment. So that is the prevailing theory to what killed the dinosaurs. We definitely have a lot of evidence to support the asteroid theory, but it's debated by some whether or not this was the sole cause of the dinosaurs' demise. Some say that the Deccan Traps, which was a volcanic formation that was in what is now India, probably played a role, if not a significant role, in the extinction of the dinosaurs. Others say that continental drift might have played a part. Throughout the Cretaceous, the continents continued to drift apart, and by the end, they were almost in the position that they're in today. However, despite these theories, the prevailing theory continues to be the asteroid, and I'd say it holds up pretty well, at least as far as I can tell. Alrighty, well, I hope you've enjoyed learning about dinosaurs today as much as I have. Now, keep in mind, this is necessarily a brief history of these amazing creatures. We're talking about millions and millions of years of evolution, but I think it's safe to say that when we go back and we learn about these incredible creatures, it gives us a picture into a world much different from our own, but at the same time is the same. It's our planet, it's our world. These dinosaurs, they represent a world that we can never reach, that we can never go back to. But as long as we keep finding their fossils, as long as we keep finding evidence of their existence for moments at a time, we can travel back to that world and we can appreciate the diversity, the resilience, and the absolute awesomeness of nature. Once again, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Zoologist Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed learning about dinosaurs as much as I did this past week. Like I said, it brought out my inner child. There's just something about dinosaurs that absolutely fascinate me. if you would like to learn more about these incredible reptiles, I'm going to be putting a few of the resources that I used in the description to this episode. You can go ahead and check those out. Once again, I want to invite you to follow us on Twitter and make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast on your favorite streaming platform if you enjoyed the episode. Also, if you have any suggestions for episodes or animals that you'd like to learn about, go ahead and reach out to us on Twitter. You can DM us, you can tweet us directly, or you can reach out to us on email. You can reach us at the.zoologist.podcast@gmail.com. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and as always, have a wild day.